Good evening, councillors. Let's make a start. My name is Patrick Hall. I'm the Mayor of the City of Canning Council. It's now 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the 18th of July 2023. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's ordinary council meeting and declare the meeting open. We start, of course, by acknowledging the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land, and we also pay our respects to elders, both past and present. Can I ask everybody here this evening to make sure their mobiles are turned off? Councillors, please turn off and put away your mobile phones for the duration of the evening. This meeting is being live streamed via the City's YouTube channel. Council meetings are public meetings and any information you provide shall be recorded and may be publicly accessible. The council chambers are not a parliament and parliamentary privilege does not apply. Elected members and staff risk being held personally liable if their comments are defamatory or breach any duty of confidentiality. Statements made during council meetings are solely those of the person making them, and nothing expressed at a council meeting can be attributed to the city unless it is adopted by resolution of council. The confirmed minutes of a council meeting are the official record of that council meeting. Verbatim minutes are not required. Nevertheless, the city publishes a recording of the meeting. Recording of council meetings must not be copied, republished or reproduced without the express permission of the City of Canning. Welcome everyone. At item 2, attendances, Councillor Parkinson is an apology this evening. At item 2.2, approved leave of absence, there are none. At item 3, relating to disclosures of interest, Chief Executive Officer Michael Littleton, over to you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, in relation to item 3.1, declarations of financial interest, Councillor Hardeep Singh has declared a proximity interest in item CD 01123. The item details proposed payment in lieu of parking plan for the Canning City Centre and Queen's Park Structure Plan area, an amendment to LP 08 cash in lieu for parking in the centre zone. The nature of the association or his interest is I live adjacent to the boundary of Queen's Park Local Structure Plan. I have received, in relation to item 3.2, declarations of impartiality. I've received none.
Thank you. Councillor Hardeep Singh, I'll ask you just to excuse yourself when that item is up for discussion, and I'll make a note in the recording. Announcements by the presiding member. I do have an announcement tonight just in regards to a recent meeting with the Honourable Bill Johnson, MLA, the member for Cannington. At Council's March 2023 Ordinary Council meeting, Report OC 001 of 23, motions carried at the 2023 AGM of electors, included the following. Councillor Bain moved an amendment that a new Part F to that motion be added, and that read that Council authorises the Chief Executive Officer to convene a meeting with the Honourable Bill Johnson, MLA, member for Cannington, to discuss crime in Arthur Street and Cannington and request assistance and support for measures to detect antisocial behaviour in the area and communicate the results to Council, and that was carried unanimously. I just wanted to inform Council that meeting has been held. That satisfies Council's decision. I recently met with the Minister just last week, shared the concerns of Council. In fact, it was Friday, and electors. I've communicated this to Council by email, but wish to read it for the public record. The Minister shared the concern of Council and the electors regarding crime in the district, specifically Arthur Street and Cannington, and he also thanked Council for raising the matter directly with him. Minister Johnson was also very pleased to hear of the City's recent increase to the Security Incentive Scheme, and he asked me to pass on his personal thanks to Council for proactively introducing measures to help reduce crime in the area. As you know, I've had a number of conversations with Minister Johnston regarding crime in this district, and last year submitted a written proposal to him seeking his assistance to fund a joint response, in brackets, by the local government, between the local government and state government, to combat crime in the southeast corridor of Perth. Today, the Minister advised me at that meeting that he had discussed these matters with the responsible Minister, who is John Quigley, and that both he and the Minister are supportive in principle. Minister Johnson indicated to me that he believed it best to further discuss options for funding crime initiatives in the South East Corridor in early 2024, and I have committed to doing so. It was a very positive conversation, and whilst we have not yet been able to secure any immediate funding for Arthur Street and Cannington, after today's discussion last Friday, I do feel confident that in 2024 the state government will be receptive to working towards tangible funding arrangements to combat crime in the area, and I'll continue that conversation with our local member, Bill Johnson. I thank him for taking the time out of his busy schedule to meet with me on behalf of Council, and I thank Councillor Bain for raising that matter, which was also seconded on the night by Councillor Singh. Thank you to you both. Reports of delegates without discussion at item 5 on tonight's agenda. Does anyone have a delegate's report they'd like to submit? None. Thank you. We shall move on. Question time for the public. Responses to previous questions taken on notice at item 6.1. There are none. Question time for the public. We don't have any written questions. We don't have any questions from the public gallery tonight, so I propose not to open or formally close public question time. The time now is 6:05. We'll just make a notation on the recording. There are no questions for council tonight from the gallery or in writing. Confirmation of minutes at item 7 on tonight's agenda. Councillors, the recommendation is on page 2 of the agenda. The recommendation is on screen that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 20th of June be confirmed as circulated. Can I have a mover, please, for that matter? Councillor Bain, thank you. Seconder. Deputy Mayor is the seconder. Thank you. We'll put that matter to the vote. One more councillor, I think, hasn't voted. We still have one more. Can I get you all just to press that green button again, just in case it didn't register? There we go.
Motion to confirm the OCM minutes has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. We move to the next item on the agenda, which is in relation to the special council meeting held on the 27th of June 2023, which our budget was endorsed. The recommendation is on page 2 of the agenda, and the recommendation is also on screen. Can I have a mover, please, for that matter? Deputy Mayor, thank you. A seconder? I'll second that from the floor, from the chair then. Thank you. We shall put that matter also to the vote.
The motion to confirm the SCM minutes has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. We move to item 8, the receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. There are no petitions this evening, no presentations, and we haven't received any deputations tonight. We move on to applications for leave at item 9, of which there are none. At item 10, questions of which due notice has been given, there are none. At item 11, items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery, again there is none. And reports of committee meetings at item 12, none. The first report on the agenda this evening at item 13 is 13.1, reports from the Office of the Chief Executive Officer, Mr Michael Littleton. The first of which is OC 006 of 23. The title of the report, West Australian Local Government Association, in brackets WALGA, 2023 Annual General Meeting, City of Canning Voting Delegates. The officer's recommendation is on screen. I shall just move that from the chair and ask for a seconder, please. We're going to open it up first for nominations. Councillors, I've nominated myself as the voting delegate for council. We don't necessarily need anyone else. We haven't received any other nominations. We can take a number of deputy voting delegates, proxy voting delegates, if anyone would like to put their name down, but I don't propose to spend an awful lot of time on this, and we haven't received any further nominations. Is that right, Governance? We've received no further nominations? I need to go anyway. I'm on the State Council. I need to be there, so I don't mind going.
As a backup, if you should need.
Liking you as a backup is subjective. If you want to be a backup, you can. I can certainly put you down as a proxy voting delegate if you like. Is that what you're proposing?
Yeah, if you need me.
Yeah, of course, okay. Can we just put councillor Jacobs then down as a proxy voting delegate? Councillors, anyone else wish to nominate? If not, we will put the matter to the vote, and that will be that the council nominates myself as the voting delegate and councillor Jacobs as the proxy voting delegate for the Western Australian Local Government Association 2023 Annual General Meeting, which will be held on Monday the 18th of September 2023. And I'll just require a seconder for that. I've moved that from the chair. Thank you, councillor Bain. I have nothing further to add. Councillor Bain, anything further to add?
Nothing further to add. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Don't want to join us? Thank you. Put the matter to the vote.
Motion OC 006-23 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. We move on to item 13.2. The Director of Corporate and Commercial, Ms Lorraine Driscoll, is the responsible officer, the first report being CC015 of 23, the title of the report being Policy Review for BR01 Tenancy Management and FM10 rating waivers for community groups. Councillors, just advice I've received this afternoon from governance. They have proposed an amended officer recommendation, and you will see that now on screen. And I'll just tell you that the recommendation, I'll just read the preamble. Officers have amended the recommendation to enable time to consider further changes to the policy and consult with elected members on those changes. Officers have raised a discrepancy which has been found and needs clarification in FM10. So for that purpose, so we don't bog the item down, the proposal is obviously with the amended recommendation that Council adopts revised policy BR01 tenancy management as contained in attachment 2, and that it defers consideration of policy FM10 rating waivers for community groups to the ordinary council meeting in September 2023. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Spencer is the mover. Seconder? Deputy Mayor Ben Kunze, thank you. Councillor Spencer, to you.
I am happy with the amended officer's recommendation, and I have nothing more to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Likewise, Mayor Hall, I'm happy to support the amended officer's recommendation to allow further work on FM10 rating waivers for community groups. And yeah, I commend it.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak against the motion before we put it to the vote? Thank you, councillors. We'll put that matter to the vote.
Motion CC-015-23 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. We move to CC 016 of 23, the monthly financial report of June 2023. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 49 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? I shall move that from the chair then. A seconder? Seconder, thank you, Councillor Bain. I have nothing to add. I thank the officers for their report. Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak against the matter? Councillor Sweeney?
Yeah, I just got a couple of follow-up questions from last week's AB that I asked Director Driscoll to follow up some questions for me, which she did, and I got those replies back, so thank you very much for that. So just a couple of follow-up ones, just in regards to the underspend with the 11 million. I'm just trying to get a bit of understanding how that occurs in terms of, does that happen organically over time, or is there any other information you can provide me with how that just suddenly pops up?
Ms Driscoll?
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, the figures that we've presented in this report are a snapshot of the June financial position. A number of financial transactions have to occur to finalise these figures. The 11 million you're referring to is the variance of our operating expenditure as of that 30th of June snapshot date. That figure is reported progressively through the year, through each monthly report that you would receive. I don't recall offhand what the figure was in May, but it would have been close to that. So you get an updated figure each month. So it's reported progressively through to you as we compare actual spend to budget spend.
Thank you.
So you're saying that progressively month by month, so it's planned, we know about that, do we? So if we know about it, I'm just trying to work out, if we know about this underspend over month by month, why do we need, and we know where it's going to be by the end of the financial year, why do we need to look at increasing the rates for the ratepayers when we know we're going to have an underspend?
Director, I'll just get you to answer that question quickly, and then, look, if you've got any further questions, Councillor, you might want to put them in writing and send them through, because they're not relevant to, we're just simply receiving the report. So I'll get to the Director to answer this question just quickly, if you don't mind, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, these figures are not the final year-end figures. There's a number of transactions that have to occur. So that 10.9 million underspend is not the final figure. That just represents the snapshot of the 30th of June accounts on the day we ran the financial statements. It's not the final figure.
Okay, I'll move on, and I will send you an email just in relation to that. I just have another question, just in relation to your reply back from TPS 33, where we now have the two funds. I understand under the Planning Act, under 154, I saw that we now have to have the two funds. So do the same terms and conditions apply with what we had before to what we have now? Just in relation to, I know what we had before related to the money has to be spent in the industrial area, something that I raised with previous Director, Mr. Kane. Does that still apply to this new reserve fund that we have now under the Act?
Director?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll have to take that one on notice. The change to the Act occurred in 2020. I'll have to give you an absolutely accurate figure. I'll have to go back and check what the conditions were. I assume the same conditions do still apply, but I'll provide you with a written response to that in the coming days.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. Any further, councillors? I've got nothing further to say.
I just have one more question.
Can I ask what the question is, Councillor? Because I'm going to rule it irrelevant if you are asking along the same line. I'll ask you to put it in writing. Look, questions during debate under section 6.1 of the standing orders, any time during debate, you can ask as many questions last week as you'd prefer to. You can ask questions offline, you can ask them by email, but during a council meeting, an ordinary council meeting, at any time during debate, a member may ask a question and with the consent of the presiding officer may ask one more further question with my consent. And honestly, I'm not certain that these are relevant. Just so you know, and I know the Director is trying really hard to explain it to you, but you not seem to. This is just a snapshot of financial activity during that period, and the period was up until the 30th of June. We're now nearly in August. We're in a different financial year, so I'm failing to see how these questions are actually relevant. We're simply receiving the financial report. We can't change it, we're just receiving it. And it's not our role or the role of the Director to educate you on the night about what about this and how does that go. I think they're better addressed offline.
Well, I don't need to be educated at all, Mr. Mayor, and it's just a question on behalf of my ratepayers that asked me.
I'm not sure whether you're asking questions on behalf of ratepayers. If you are, can you tell me which ratepayer you're asking the question on behalf of?
Really? We really want to do that?
I'd really like to know.
Really? Okay, so let's move on. I've got another question just in relation to.
I'm not allowing any further questions, Councillor Sweeney. We're going to move on.
Well, these questions are from last week's question, which Ms. Driscoll
We'll take that
replied to.
offline. I'm not arguing with you. I'm making a ruling here. We're going to take that offline.
like
I'm
you're
not
arguing.
allowing any more questions
Does sound like
on the
you're arguing.
financial report.
It sounds like you're arguing with yourself, so we're done.
I'm not
Thanks.
arguing with myself, and Councillor, I would ask you to show some respect, or at least perhaps try to understand the standing orders on this. I've explained that to you. You keep asking questions that I'm ruling are not relevant, and I'm asking you to move on. You wish to argue, I don't. Let's move on. Councillors, let's put the matter to the vote.
Motion CCO 1623 has been carried with 9 in favour, with Councillor Sweeney voting against the motion.
Thank you. We move on to the reports of the Director of Planning and Development, Mr Graham Bride. It's CD 010 of 23. The title of the report being the adoption of right-of-way, the city's right-of-way strategy. The officer's amended recommendation is on screen. And councillors, I'll just read that second part that has come about, obviously, in respect to the deputation made by Mr Campo at last week's meeting. And I think that follows on from the intent of council, certainly what occurred on that night. Part 2 is in respect to right-of-way ID 19 and brackets at Skip Street to Gerard Street. Requests the Chief Executive Officer consult with the owners of 13A Davey Street, East Cannington. That obviously is Mr Campo, prior to any proposed construction of the right-of-way, to consider relocation of the olive tree in brackets currently located in the right-of-way to elsewhere on the property or external to the property in brackets but within the property at the city's cost. That is the amended recommendation. Can I have a mover, please, for that amended recommendation? I've got Councillor Sabiri first, and then I have Councillor Spencer Teo second. Councillor Sabiri.
I'm happy with the officer's recommendation. Got the communication that the officers have had with the residents, and I'm happy to proceed with this.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. First, I'd just like to commend the compassion showed by the officers with this, and thank Mr and Mrs Campo for coming last week and giving a deputation. I would like to move a couple of minor amendments. A minor one, 2.2, being that we look at replanting this tree by the end of July next year. And the other one is that the any funds that are received from the sale of land as part of the right-of-ways goes back into the reserve account and used to fund the strategy.
Can I ask Mr Bride, in relation to the first amendment, which I would rule would be a minor amendment, adding the words "and by 31st of July 2024. Director, is there any issue from the city in relation to being able to ascribe to that date?
Through Mr Mayor, no, from the city's perspective, whether it's at the time of construction of the right-of-way or that particular date, there's no issue from the city's perspective.
Councillor Sabiri, do you have any issue with that amendment? I certainly I don't. It just puts a date on there to provide some clarity around when that would occur. The first part of it, not the second part of it.
Have we discussed it with the resident? I mean, the whole thing, I guess, what I moved was because I was happy with the discussions the officers have had with the residents. So I guess moving the tree and all that.
I think the first part of the amended motion actually requests us to actually undertake consultation with the owners. I think we're just saying that needs to occur by the 31st of July 2024. So that's still 12 months away.
Happy with that, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll just include that as a minor amendment. Councillor Singh, have you got a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. Mr. Mayor, through you, what if Part 2 says, request the Chief Executive Officer consult the owners of 38 Davis Street, East Cannington prior to any proposed construction of right-of-way? What if the proposed construction isn't going to happen for next 2-3 years? Are we, by putting 31st of July, are we basically pushing the construction to come forward? I mean, basically this is a question for the director. What is the estimated time we expect at this time?
Director, you heard the question from Councillor Singh. Can I ask for a response?
Yeah, through Mr Mayor. Given there's a process to convert the private right-of-way into a public right-of-way, and that needs to go through a significant process, needs to come to council, needs public consultation, and needs to be approved by the state government to allow the right-of-way to be converted. And council will still need to, at some point, consider funding for that particular right-of-way. So if this was one of the first off the rank, and it is a high priority in terms of the implementation of the strategy, I would suggest it would be probably 4 years away, to be honest.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo?
Can I also just answer that question, considering it was my amendment?
Can you answer that question?
Yeah.
No, because it's been clarified by the director. There's no need for you to answer the question. That was only in relation to the date.
Okay.
So you wanted to put an amendment. Obviously, we've got an amendment up here on the screen. You're moving that amendment. Can I ask for a seconder for the new paragraph 3? Deputy Mayor is going to second that. Councillor Spencer-Teo, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, the reason why I wanted to make that date specific is that if we waited 4 years to move this tree, the roots would be far more established and the chances of its survival being relocated would be minimal. So I would, considering the significance of the tree and the emotional attachment to it, I think
We're just speaking to paragraph 3. We're just speaking to paragraph 3. So the date there, that's already been taken as a minor amendment. That's in.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
My apologies. I misunderstood. Okay, so sorry. Point 3, as I have mentioned when we were initially discussing the right-of-way strategy, this is obviously, without the DCP, was an unfunded strategy. However, there still could be a significant shortfall. So I just wanted to make sure that any funds received from the right-of-way strategy and the sale of land would go back into it. It's Director Bride has confirmed it's around about 169,000 potential revenue that we can generate from the sale of land, and to me that's $169,000 less of ratepayers' funds to fund the strategy. So that's just my rationale behind that amendment, and I hope everybody will support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor? Just in relation to the amendment.
Yeah, I support it, unless there's any reason not to. My biggest concern with, as at the previous council meeting, with respect to the strategy was the financial costs to ratepayers when comparing it to other projects. And so if we can, I guess, quarantine funds from the right-of-way sales into a reserve account to invest in upgrades, then that makes sense.
Thank you. Can I just ask a question to Director Bride? Just in relation to, my query would be in relation to, I think it's page 36 of the strategy under 7.3.2 process. Talks about the funds. Look, I might be mistaken. I think I'm talking about the same thing. It talks about change of this use requires 1 month of public notice or declaration in the annual budget. And I'm wondering how that would affect this new paragraph 3, which talks about tying in the use, the purpose of the reserve to the strategy, whereas the strategy actually talks about the fact, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that the purpose can be changed by public consultation or budget.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, the item 3 is really just saying that in the event of, we've only got one particular right of way where you can, the land is freehold owned by council, so that particular right of way, the funds from the sale of that land can be put into this reserve account. A right of way reserve would have to be a reserve that is considered at the time of the possibly next year's budget. So if council at that point wishes to create a reserve, it would have to define the purpose of the reserve, and that would be part of the budget process. So that's when, after that process has occurred, then you can put funds into that account.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak just on the amendment or ask a question? No, let's put the amendment to the vote then, councillors. Thank you.
The amendment to CD-01023 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. The substantive motion is now on screen, or it shortly will be. Thank you, governance. Councillor Sabiri, you've already spoken. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Spencer-Teo, have you got anything else you would wish to add? You haven't spoken on the matter? No, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on the matter before we put it to the vote? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to say, look, I voted against this back in March. Councillor Spencer-Teo at the time mentioned about putting out public consultation and hearing what comes back. And I got to admit that sort of changed my way of thinking. In an effort to be a bit more pragmatic, I recognise that the strategy is about a bit more than just upgrading a number of right-of-ways. And whilst I still maintain that $1.2 to $2.4 million of ratepayer funds to upgrade these right-of-ways based on the financials put forward might not compare as high to other things we have across the city. The reality is there's more to it than that, and it will be up to future councils to decide whether or not they want to invest in the upgrades and whether or not they can wait for the returns to come back, depending on how much we get back through the development contributions. But yeah, there's far more to it than this, and there's a number of homeowners and residents that have long wanted some sort of resolve with their right-of-way, and that's why I support the strategy, and I commend the staff for the amount of detailed work that's gone into it.
Thank you. Look, I'll just add that I support the strategy and the amendments, and I want to thank Councillor Sabiri and Councillor Spencer Teo for their comments, and also the Deputy Mayor for his contribution. Look, I too was really taken by Mr Campo's deputation last week, and I'm really pleased that sometimes councils are criticised for not listening, and administrations likewise. And I think it's a really fine illustration and example of the difference in this council and this administration. I'm really pleased that the proposal put was actually entertained by staff and supported, and I really feel that is showing some compassion and listening to our residents, and I hope people have noticed. And so I thank Mr Campo publicly for having the courage to come down and address us last week on an issue which I know for him was particularly emotional. So thank you one and all. If anyone else wishes to speak, I'll entertain it. If not, we shall put it to the vote. Thank you, councillors. Let's put the matter to the vote.
Substantive motion is as amended. CDO 1023 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. The next item, we have Councillor Singh has made a declaration in relation to this, a conflict of interest, and is leaving the room for the purpose of the record. Thank you, Councillor Singh. The matter is CD 01123, proposed payment in lieu of parking plan for the Canning City Centre and Queen's Park structure plan areas, and amendment to LP 08 cash in lieu for parking in the centre zone. Again, for the record, Councillor Hardeep Singh has left the room. The officer's recommendation is on screen. Can I have a mover, please, for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Jacobs, thank you. Councillor Spencer Teo is the seconder. Councillor Jacobs.
I support the motion. It's necessary as per government regulation to do this plan. And I'll leave my comments as that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I too support the officer recommendation. Have nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak? Councillor Sabiri. Yes.
Yeah, at this stage, I'll be voting against this item, but might change depending on. I might ask for clarifications, for some clarification. In item 31, the city's most recent method for calculation for payment in lieu contributions included the cost of construction. That was equated to $22,500.
Are you talking about paragraph 31 of the report? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. And then there's a shortfall under the system that's being forced on the city by the WAPC. The figure will be $1,755. That's on paragraph 35. Isn't payment in lieu of parking generally where land is sparse and expensive? That's my understanding when we do this. So why would the developers bother building the required number of bays at all?
I'll ask for a response from the director.
I have another bit to the question.
Yep.
And then if we do vote against this, would it simply mean we don't have a payment in lieu collection system? And if a DA did not include the required parking, would we be within our right to reject it, or they request more suitable parking?
Director Bright, can I ask for a response?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of paragraph 31, the reason the West Australian Planning Commission brought that particular guidance in the regulations was because local governments were inconsistent in their application of a formula, and the cost per bay was different across a number of councils. I agree it's a pretty significant drop down, but this would apply across the board, so that developers developing across local government boundaries have the same, I guess, the same formula is applied to cash and lieu. So that's the reason the land component was taken out, as you mentioned, as part of that calculation. So we can only adopt the policy with that formula included. If we didn't adopt the policy, it would just mean that if there are a shortfall of bays, most of the decisions around the city centre and Queen's Park would probably be at a JDAP. And if there is a shortfall and the JDAP is comfortable with that shortfall, the ability to leverage funds through a cash and lieu wouldn't be available because council hasn't got a policy. So we would essentially miss out on funds. And I think it's important to note that the city's policy, which is in draft, which will go out to public consultation if council agrees tonight, it does make it clear that the first port of call is developers should provide bays on site. So the city would have to be comfortable with a cash and lieu position. So it's not a default that developers will not provide much parking. It's in their best interest to ensure that there's a viable parking supply as part of their development.
Councillor Saviri?
I guess, but if it's cheaper to just pay cash, pay in lieu, why would they bother? Is that?
Director, are you able to respond to that?
Through Mr. Mayor. As I said, council or the decision maker would have to be accepting of a shortfall, so there has to be some good reasons why a shortfall is being proposed. So that there's some test about the adequacy of parking on site. So I don't think the result of the policy would mean that developers would simply forego providing parking and paying a cash and lieu contribution.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Saviri? You've asked a number of questions. If you wanted to speak either for or against it, you said you were seeking clarity and then you would decide on what you would do.
I guess at this stage it's going to go to public consultation, so just roll with it. I'll vote for it to go, yep.
Thank you. And that's the fact. It's going to be considered by the people most affected by it, that is members of the public. So we put it out to public consultation. Thank you, Councillor. Anyone wish to speak against it before we put it to the vote? In the absence of anyone speaking against it, Councillor Jacobs, no need to rebut. There is nothing to rebut. We will put the matter to the vote. Thank you.
I'm waiting on one more vote, please, councillors.
Hardeep's out of the room.
Oh, Hardeep's out of the room, of course. Yeah, good pick up, CEO. That was a test governance.
Motion CDO 1123 has been carried with 8 in favour, with Councillor Sweeney voting against the motion and noting that Councillor Singh was out of the room for the vote.
Thank you. We'll just pause for a moment. The Chief Executive Officer is just going to ask Councillor Singh to join us. And just as he is joining us, we'll move to the next item, which is 13.4 for the Director of Infrastructure and Environment. There are no reports from that directorate. We welcome Councillor Singh back into the room. Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Singh, just for your information, the matter has been passed, 8 in favour, 1 against, and the matter will go to public consultation. At item 13.5, the responsible officer is Dr. Sarah McQuaid, the Director of Customer and Community. The item is CO 004 of 23, review of policy CS 401, sports fields, seasonal hire of sports grounds. The officer's recommendation is simply that Council adopts revised policy CS 401, sports field, seasonal hire. The recommendation is on page 117 of the agenda and is on screen, and obviously the revised policy has been distributed. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? That would be Deputy Mayor Ben Kunza. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A seconder would be Councillor Sabiri. Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Mayor Hall. Look, I'm happy to support the officer recommendation. I think there's some really good additions to this policy, namely discouraging the booking of reserves that are not required, hopefully improving transparency and allowing accessibility of groups that need space, but also encouraging clubs to utilise their facilities by providing 15 hours free usage. I've been to committee meetings and AGMs and that where community groups have decided to use someone's house or the RSL because there was no point booking the relevant pavilion. So to enable them to hold the AGMs and committee meetings at no cost is actually a very good outcome that the city's putting in. So I think it's fantastic, and I encourage councillors to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Sabiri.
Yep, I'm happy with the clarity the new policy provides, and it's been discussed at SIBS before, so voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Sabiri. Anyone wish to speak against the issue? Thank you, councillors. Let's put this one to the vote.
Motion CO 00423 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. At item 14, motions of which previous notice has been given, there are none this evening. Item 15, urgent business, there is also none. We have a confidential matter. Thank you, Shan, for leaving. I want to thank members of the public for their attendance tonight and ask they please leave the chamber in order for council to consider the confidential matter, and we'll do that in just a moment. You will do the vote, yep. Can I have a mover and a seconder that confidential item EN 014 of 23, proposed amendment, City of Canning Waste Services Agreement and Participants Agreement with the Rivers Regional Council and Waste to Energy Partner Avertis Energy be dealt with behind closed doors in accordance with section 5.23, subsection 2 of the Local Government Act. I'll move that from the chair. Can I have a seconder for that? I'll take Councillor Jacobs. No, you... Councillor Jacobs, thank you. Is the seconder. Councillor Sabiri, I'll come to you in just a moment. I'll just start the conversation. Councillors, there may be some discussion on this matter tonight in relation to the confidential matter and whether or not it should be dealt with behind closed doors. I've had discussions today with the CEO and others, and also had the opportunity just to engage with Councillor Sabiri on the matter, and I know she has a difference of opinion or may. I don't want to preempt what she may say. This is a highly sensitive matter regarding a contract for waste to energy contract of up to $1 billion, and these are highly sensitive negotiations, and the contract does, regardless of what anyone might say, contain discussion that may or may not jeopardise that contract, and also the other councils, the Rivers Regional Council members, and I think we should err on the side of caution in relation to hearing this matter behind closed doors. We've had advice from the Chief Executive Officer and the administration, and also from our legal counsel, that this matter should be dealt with as a confidential matter under section 5.232 of the Local Government Act for good reason. I think it would be folly for this council, councils previous to us, and I'm talking about those that have had issues in the past, have failed to actually agree to some recommendations made by council, and I think it would be folly for this council to risk going against the advice of its CEO and legal counsel, and for no apparent reason other than their own personal feelings on the matter, go against that recommendation. I think that would be fraught with danger. There is inherent risk in having a live stream discussion about $1 billion contract where we can't control what anybody may or may not say in this room. And any word out, no matter how well intended it is, any conversation in this room that may breach confidentiality around this contract, accidentally or not, could cause significant damage for this council. And I would put to council, and this hasn't been confirmed, my own belief with this is, having been advised and had advice from the CEO that this matter should be dealt with behind closed doors, if council were to overturn that decision and decide to now deal with it, if that was a vote, those councillors that actually decided upon that, if something happened, and I'm not saying that it would, but if something did happen, there would be all sorts of issues in relation to that. So I always would advise council to err on the side of caution with something like this. The decision will be made public. I am all for public accountability and for airing these matters publicly, but we are one of more than 6 participants, stakeholders in this contract, and I don't see any benefit of running the risk that tonight in a public forum somebody may say something that is being live streamed publicly, and I think that is just folly. So I would really urge council to support the officer's recommendation, which is to put this matter behind closed doors. Councillor Jacobs.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Mayor. I think contracts can be quite sensitive, and it's a bit like playing poker. You don't want to show your cards to the other player. And I know that in this space there's lots of private contractors that would like to get information to position themselves in the market, and I think, I think it's in nature. I don't object to anything the Mayor said, and I think from my experience on council in the last, 7, nearly 8 years, this sort of stuff naturally is confidential. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sabiri, would you like to speak? Thank you.
I originally put my hand up to say I'm happy to second it, to go behind closed doors.
You're okay?
I'm not happy with the whole report in general, but yeah, that was my intention of putting my hand up. Otherwise, I'd move an alternative motion beforehand. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Councillors, if in the absence of anyone wishing to speak against moving behind closed doors, we will put the matter to the vote. Thank you, councillors.
The motion to go behind closed doors has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. We will now move behind closed doors. I will ask Thank you to those at home. The council has now resumed the live streaming of its council meeting. The time now is 7:12 p.m. Council has just dealt with a confidential item, and that item was EN 014 of 23. The title of the item was Proposed Amendments, City of Canning Waste Services Agreement and Participants Agreement with the Rivers Regional Council and Waste to Energy Partner Avertus Energy. The officer's recommendation was carried. It was carried 8 in favour and 2 against, and those against being Councillor Sweeney and Councillor Sabiri. And I'll read the officer's recommendation, which has been endorsed. The officer's recommendation is that Council endorses, and pursuant to section 9.49A of the Local Government Act 1995, authorises the Mayor and Chief Executive Officer to execute the following deeds of agreement attached as confidential attachments 1 and 2. They are 1, the Kwinana Waste to Energy Project Waste Supply Agreement Variation Agreement number 2, in brackets, execution version, closed brackets, and 2, the Participants Agreement Variation Agreement, in brackets, execution version, closed brackets. And as I said, that matter was carried. That concludes tonight's meeting. There is no further business. The time is now 7:13 p.m. and I declare that the meeting has now closed, and I thank Council for its attendance this evening. Thank you.